Hello, assalamu alaikum, namaste, Sasriyakal. My name is Farheen Khan and you're watching the AZEEZA show. Today we're talking about politics and just generally how policy affects people and in particular women. So with me today I have Michelle Bielek. Michelle, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure. So Michelle, why don't we just jump right into it? Why don't you tell us who you are, what your relationship to politics is, and then we'll start the conversation.
What a great question. My name is Michelle Bielek and I'm 45. I have dabbled in politics a little bit in my life. I probably started getting involved when probably in my mid-20s, I would say, with the NDP party, and sort of working on the local level, working on various different campaigns. So everything from distributing literature to putting up signs, to knocking on doors, and then as well on the executive of the Riding Association. And ever since, I got more involved with the party on the executive level, as well as been a candidate for 5 elections with the NDP.
Wow, that's remarkable.
Yes, yeah.
I definitely know what I can just say I know a little bit about how being a candidate feels, so because I've only done it once, but good for you that you've been so engaged.
Oh, absolutely. I think that I learned probably, I would say, in my university years a lot about taking action and not just talking about issues and policy,
for sure,
but actually putting yourself in the position where you're actually taking action. I guess that has to do with the fact that I was taking women's studies at the time, my second degree, and I learned that to bring about social change, it really took that next step, which means taking action. So even though I was just like every other woman and inhibited and didn't have the confidence to go in front of a crowd or debate, you just sort of throw yourself in there and take that risk, and know that and believe in yourself that you actually have something to contribute and have something to say and have a voice. Because quite frequently we see in politics women's voice is silenced or we're marginalized. Our values, our beliefs, our ideals. But I'd like to think that the NDP party actually does the complete opposite. I know that as a party that it is part of our policy to ensure that 50% of our candidates are racialized or women, which I'm very proud of, and it really and that they actually do support women to a certain degree during the election campaigning. But it is difficult. I'd have to say, and as well, you ran as a candidate, that being taken seriously as a woman and as a political figure by the public and by your male counterparts really, is a difficult sort of struggle to overcome.
For sure.
But I really do encourage women. It's sort of really has changed my life with respects to, again, my confidence, my ability to, further sort of social activist pursuits in the community. So for me, it was a learning experience, but I think that I'm a better person because of the experience of actually running.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think like you said, it's definitely not easy, but it's definitely important to do, and being critically engaged in the process is so important. I know that before I decided to run as well, the conversation was a lot about, you've been critical of the system, now it's time to be critically engaged in the process, and I think that's important. I just want to talk a little bit about, policy. Like a lot of times, there's been this debate that I've had with people to say, well, does policy matter when you're running or not, right? And in general, how much influence can you make with respect to policy? So maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah, sure. Well, policy leads to laws, rules, regulations, as well as funding, right? So what a party or candidate or anyone who's running for political office stands for is really, really important. And so the policy of that entity, that government, really will shape all the general discourse of everybody, really. So again, you know, laws, rules, regulations on how we function as a society. Most importantly, how our tax dollars are allocated, what projects, what ideals, what certain social programs will be funded, right? So, you know, a government that, you know, supports, you know, such things as social programs and ensuring that, you know, our healthcare is funded properly, our education's funded properly, our social system in general is funded properly. I would say, you know, is important to most of the public.
Right.
But then, you know, you can have another government where they would rather give you a tax break and, you know, send the money back to you and say you as an individual will be able to purchase your health care or, you know, put your child through private school or public school or childcare. So policy really, really does shape how society functions in general, right? And actually how we relate to each other and what kind of society we generally want in the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that, you know, in recent days we've been watching sort of what's happening, you know, in particular in Ontario, some of the changes that have already been made. So, you know, within the first couple of days of our new premier taking office, like, you know, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that we're in for a difficult time. I would say as a society in general, really, as a province. I think that this Conservative government will change the landscape, I think, in 4 years and put us, I think, in a place where we don't want to be. It reminds me of back in the 1990s, late 1990s, during Mike Harris years, where we saw a lot of cuts taking place. Right. So already, you know, Ford has come into government, he's sworn in, and we have, you know, a depletion in the various different departments. Like, you know, we had the conversation about the removal of the status of women,
the ministry,
right? And how that will impact many different women's programs, right? So we're worried about the violence against women's sector. We're worried about the shelter system as well.
For sure.
As well as, you know, like equity in general, equity in schools, an equity mandate in employment. So, you know,
like the anti-racism director is gone.
Exactly.
From what I understand, right?
Yeah. See, this is just the beginning, right? You know, and then we're going to have cuts to healthcare. We're going to have. We just saw today that we had the firing of the new head post of in science. So our head scientist in Ontario. Well, she only had the post for a few months, but still, we know that. You know, they've decided to back away from cap and trade as a means to bring about us reaching our environmental targets.
Right.
You know, we've also seen the new Ford government decide that they're not going to implement various different recommendations that have been put forth in oversight of our police forces. So there's going to be definitely, what I see, some changes that are really going to affect the everyday Ontarian. You know, whether that's going to be, like I said, education, healthcare. There's going to be some cuts.
For sure.
You know, in the past, it has severely affected people.
I think one of the things that, you know, is really challenging. I mean, I know when in 2015 we were both, you know, running, and we were very, like, you know, active and vocal about the whole. Just generally, you know, the anti-Harper, if you will, right? Just, you know, trying to acknowledging that, the person in the highest level of government is being so hateful and divisive. It's time to make a change, right? And I think, collectively, even though we didn't get into power as a party, we were able to make that shift happen, right? We mobilized people to make a decision to say, we're done with this, right?
Yes.
So how is it that, and this is the thing that, I think there's a lot of people who are very troubled, and I feel like, there was a lot of sort of individuals who sort of were double-minded about the whole process. Like, how do we, how is it that, in the south, south of the border, like we have a president like we do, how is it that, we now have a premier like the one we do, right? Like, where are the people who, want to have progressive, changes? And, if we talk about, if they're the same voters who made those decisions 2015, then why now are we still in this place,
I think that we're what we're seeing, and this is globally, right? So we're seeing this sort of like very right-wing conservative movement going on, right? And I think it's foundationally racist-based movement. It started early in Europe with the influx of Syrian refugees and various other refugees coming from Africa as well to Europe, and how it has impacted those countries.
Right.
And what it has actually, I think, unleashed is this sort of very right-wing, anti-establishment movement. That is severely problematic in many ways.
Michelle, can I just, can we just take a quick break?
Absolutely,
and we'll be back.
Sure.
All right, we'll be back after this. Welcome back to the AZEEZA show. We're talking about politics, about policy, and the impact it has on everyday people. And with me is Michelle. So Michelle,
Hi.
we're just talking about, how we ended up here.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to continue for a while. And I was just about to say that I think that the election of an anti-establishment President Trump in the United States, and has unleashed a level of incivility that I've never sort of seen before, where you have the leader of the free world, so to speak, being able to compulsively lie about things, say whatever he wants to say, has been downright accused of sexual harassment and sexual assault on women, and that's okay. So, you have his behavior being acceptable. Right? And how does that affect society in general, right?
Right, or the dehumanization of children, right?
Exactly.
And newcomers, and being caged, and and things like this.
It proliferates down, right? If that's acceptable from the leader of the free world, then that's acceptable to anybody else.
Right.
So we're seeing this unleashing of various different acts by people that I don't think that they would have been capable of doing before, saying things, doing things, hurting other people directly or indirectly, mostly directly. So, again, racist comments, sexist comments, derogatory comments, increases of violence, all these various different things are happening. And I don't want to be, be the bearer of bad news, but I think that, I think that we're in for a struggle. Now, what usually ends up happening, and we've seen this historically, and again, this is my background in history as well, is that people do rise up. When they see that things are getting really difficult and really bad, and I think that there will be a force to be reckoned with in 4 years. I think even with, Trump, it'll be obviously sooner than that.
Right.
But really what it's about is mobilizing people, and people having the guts to stand up and support. Like you always talk about allies, right?
Yeah.
So we have to stand by each other. And stand by each other, stand by other movements, right?
Absolutely.
And we have to unite together in our mission to fight this really, really negative divisive movement that's going on right now.
So Michelle, what do you, why do you think people voted for I mean, we'll talk, Trump and Doug Ford? Like, what are what's the basis behind that? Do you think?
Yeah, you know what? Politics is politics. In Canada, it's the same thing, right? So the Conservative, I think there's many different reasons why. Again, it's this anti-establishment type of candidate he was.
Right.
But I think, the Conservative Party, quite frankly, has an excellent war machine behind them. They are capable of mobilizing the vote. Specifically, the people who usually vote Conservative in Canada are those now who are probably what we consider the baby boomer generation, those who really believe in a government that is hands off, a government that wants to almost like perform government like a business, where they're saving money, less government, interference in your life. And there's a lot of people that support that, but they always get the vote out, and that's really important. I would have to say though that the general public, a majority of the general public, do not really support the conservative ideals.
No, exactly.
I think that that people really do believe that in helping other people, those who are struggling in society, that we believe that just because a person is homeless or in a shelter or is unemployed or is going through health problems, that we should lift that person up.
Absolutely.
And, get that individual on their feet and get them contributing back into society. And it's just in the best interest of society, right? But, getting people out to vote is really what it comes down to. So, it just so happens that in 2015, people believed or supported the Liberal government because they believed that they foundationally had the ability, the experience and the ability to govern over the NDP, I think. Right,
for sure. So why don't we switch gears a little bit? So let's talk a little bit more about policy. We've talked politics. So, some of the things that you've done, Michelle, you've mentioned that, talking about sort of taking your activism to a different level and doing some of the policy changes. What are the kinds of things that you've been able to do?
Wow. I said this, actually I was speaking to someone yesterday and I said that I'm sort of a disruptor. He called me a leader and I said, no, I'm not really a leader. I think I'm more of a disruptor, right? Because I'm not comfortable really taking the lead. I'm more of, an action-oriented person, right?
Right.
So, policy is a lot of, it seems to be such a high-level thing, right? But for social change to happen, it certainly needs to be from the top down, right? Because you need the funding and you need sort of the structure and the backbone to change things. But it also starts from the grassroots up, right?
For sure.
So I've done a lot of sort of grassroots mobilization around issues, specifically housing and homelessness, right? I think that, and poverty reduction as well. Within the region of Peel, that's sort of where I live, and so that's how I get involved. So specifically, I'll just tell you about one thing that we just did more or less recently. So my work around homelessness has led me to find out that we don't really know who is homeless in our community, and because of such, we decided, just again, grassroots, the frontline workers, those who are working in our homeless shelters, and other community activists, to come together and do the first ever enumeration in Peel. So to find out who these individuals are, do a survey with them, and be able to get some more information about who these individuals are and where they're at,
what they need, right? And what their supports they require. Yeah.
Exactly. And we've been able to take this list of individuals to the next level, where we can actually start housing people or providing services to these individuals based on their need, right?
How many people were there?
The enumeration 2016, we had of chronic homeless individuals, it was over 260. We just recently did another enumeration in Peel, and this was in collaboration with the region of Peel. and it was over 900 people who were surveyed. So we're seeing a drastic rise in the individuals who are homeless. And you know, this statistics also has some other sobering facts that a majority of our homeless are middle-aged men, and over 50% of those who we surveyed have mental health issues. So a lot of glaring sort of statistics comes out of this information, and this is where that activism can actually change policy, right? So we are capable of taking this information to council, and this is where you can advocate for changes to mental health programming. You can again advocate for providing rent supplements so that we can start really implementing a housing first approach to homelessness. So, you know, the grassroots activism that goes on really can influence policy at the same time, right? Sometimes it's a top-down approach, right? Where a government like the federal government will implement a national housing strategy. Or sometimes it can start from the grassroots, right? So I like starting disrupting from the grassroots. You know, I walk into meetings at the Region Appeal and they're like, oh no, Michelle's here. What is she going to say? What is she going to do? Right?
Great.
But
that's important.
Yeah, to me, it's like, that's right.
Well, you're advocating for the people who are homeless,
well,
right?
Sometimes like you've got that, you're capable of doing it, just like the work that you're doing here and your work every day, right? You're able to be the voice for those who are silenced, right?
And you have that lived experience, right, that you talk about?
I really do, and I think that brings a lot to the table. You know, I've been homeless a few times, various different reasons in my life, and have had to live in my car even for an extended period of time. And I think that once you've been there, I think once you've lost everything and you feel a sense of hopelessness, and you're lucky enough to have people around you who you can rely on and count on, whether that be somewhere you can sleep at night, you know, friends and family who you can support, then you're lucky to somehow climb yourself out of that place.
For sure.
But then there's people who have nobody. There's people who are homeless who have severe addictions and severe mental health issues, where their family and friends have all abandoned them, and they have nowhere to go. And, you know, those are the people that I reflect on and that I worry about.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, they're the people who die on our streets, nameless. Yeah.
Well, Michelle, I wanted to say thank you so much for being on the show. I'm sure this is not the last time you'll be on the show. I'm sure we'll have more conversations on the issue of housing and homelessness, and hopefully we'll have some others come on to talk about their lived experience as well. So to our audience, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next week.